Humans quit, the Council empires collapsed overnight. The silent departure Dr. Marcus Webb stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Trade Consortium, feeling the weight of 300 alien eyes upon him. The chamber was designed to intimidate, with its soaring crystal walls and elevated platforms that placed the founding species high above everyone else. Humans occupied the lowest tier, a position that had been justified as temporary when Earth first joined 30 years ago. That temporary arrangement had become permanent. Marcus was 52 years old, with silver hair and tired eyes that had seen too many compromises. He wore the simple gray uniform of the human diplomatic corps, plain compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of the other delegates. His hands held a single data tablet, though he had memorized every word he was about to say. High Chancellor Vorix of the Dramani Empire spoke first, his triple-jointed arms gesturing dismissively. The Dramani were tall, insectoid beings who had founded the consortium 5,000 years ago. Their chitinous plates gleamed under the chamber lights, and their compound eyes reflected Marcus in 1,000 facets. The Tiered Species Act has been approved by majority vote, Vorix announced, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless standard speech. All species will now be assigned permanent classification levels based on their contributions to galactic civilization. This will streamline decision-making and resource allocation. Marcus had read the act. He knew what it meant. Humans would be classified as Tier 4, along with a dozen other younger species. They would have no voting rights on major decisions. Their movements would be restricted. Their access to advanced technology would be limited. Essentially, would become permanent second-class citizens in a galaxy they had helped hold together. Beside Vorix, Ambassador Kelthora of the Silicant Collective nodded her crystalline head in agreement. The Silicants were beings of living glass, beautiful and cold. "This is logical," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "Younger species lack the wisdom of age. They should follow, not lead." Marcus waited for the chamber to quiet. Protocol demanded that lower-tier species could only speak when specifically addressed. But today, protocol was about to break. "High Chancellor," Marcus said clearly, his voice carrying across the chamber, "I speak not to argue against your decision, but to inform you of ours." Vorix's antennae twitched with irritation. "You were not given permission to speak, human." "I no longer require it," Marcus replied calmly. He activated his data tablet, and the signal went out instantly to every human device in consortium space. On ships and stations, in laboratories and medical centers, in mines and factories, millions of humans felt their communicators vibrate with a single word: Exodus. As of this moment, Marcus continued, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Trade Consortium. Within 72 hours, every human citizen will depart consortium space. We will honor existing contracts only to the extent that they allow peaceful departure. We will take nothing that belongs to others, but we will leave nothing of ourselves behind. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates from various species clicked, hummed, roared, and whistled their shock and outrage. Marcus stood quietly, waiting for them to process what he had said. Chancellor Vorix recovered first. "This is unacceptable. You cannot simply leave. You have obligations. We have fulfilled every obligation stated in our membership agreement," Marcus said. "That agreement includes a withdrawal clause requiring 72 hours notice. We are providing that notice now." Ambassador Kelthera's crystalline face somehow managed to express disdain. "You are nothing without the consortium. Where will you go? Who will trade with you? You are children playing at independence." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Perhaps. But we are children who have been running your household while you took credit for it." "Explain yourself," demanded General Thorx of the Krenithi Dominion. The Krenithi were warrior beings, scaled and massive, with reputations built on military conquest. For 30 years, humans have served as problem solvers throughout consortium space, Marcus said. When your ships break down in deep space, human engineers fix them. When your trade negotiations stall, human mediators find solutions. When your automated systems fail, human technicians make them work again. You call us Tier 4, but you depend on us for Tier 1 functions. Ridiculous, Orcs said. We managed perfectly well before humans arrived, did you? Marcus asked. 30 years ago, the consortium was in decline. Trade routes were failing. Technology was stagnating. Wars between member species were increasing. Then humans joined and suddenly everything ran smoothly again. You never asked why? He deactivated his tablet. Now you will learn. Goodbye, High Chancellor. I hope you find the answers you seek. Marcus turned and walked toward the chamber exit. Behind him, delegates shouted demands and threats, but he did not look back. At the doorway, he passed his assistant, Lieutenant Chen, a young woman who had been waiting nervously outside. Is it done? She asked quietly. It's done, Marcus confirmed. Send the confirmation to all human stations. Operation Silent Departure is now active. Across the galaxy, the exodus began. On Consortium Station 17, Chief Engineer Robert Kane stood before his team of 43 human technicians. The station was a massive trading hub that processed goods from 200 worlds. Its systems were complex, a patchwork of different alien technologies that had never been designed to work together. Pack your personal belongings, Kane told his people. We leave in 60 hours. A young technician named Sarah raised her hand. Sir, what about the fusion reactor? We're the only ones who know how to balance it properly. If it fails, 30,000 beings could die. Kane had been expecting this question. He had been the station's chief engineer for 12 years, and he had grown fond of many of the alien residents. We'll leave detailed instructions. Every procedure, every adjustment, every emergency protocol, if they follow our documentation exactly, they'll be fine. And if they don't follow it? Sarah asked. Then they'll learn why they should have treated us better, Kane said grimly. 60 hours later, Kane's team departed on the transport ship Horizon. As they undocked, Kane looked back at the massive station through the viewport. Its lights gleamed in the darkness of space, everything running perfectly. He wondered how long it would stay that way. The answer came faster than anyone expected. 18 hours after the last humans left Consortium Station 17. The fusion reactor's balance started to drift. The Dramani technician assigned to replace Kane checked the human documentation. But it was written in technical language he did not fully understand. He made adjustments based on what he thought was right. The reactor's output spiked by 15%. Alarms blared throughout the station. The Dramani technician tried to correct the problem, but each adjustment made things worse. Within 6 hours, the station had to execute an emergency evacuation. 30,000 beings fled to emergency pods, while the reactor spiraled toward critical failure. The reactor did not explode. Human safety systems prevented that. But it did shut down completely, and the Dramani could not restart it. Consortium Station 17 went dark, would remain dark for the next 3 months. Similar scenarios played out across Consortium space. On the industrial world of Kelvin Prime, human mining coordinators had been managing automated extraction systems for 15 years. The systems were old, built by the Silicants centuries ago, but humans had modified them to run far more efficiently. When the humans left, the Silicants tried to operate the mines themselves. Within a week, production had dropped by 60%. Within 2 weeks, 3 major tunnels collapsed due to improper support beam maintenance. On the medical research station, Healing Light, human biochemists had been working alongside alien doctors to develop treatments for dozens of diseases. The aliens believed they were the primary researchers, with humans serving as assistants. After the humans left, the alien doctors discovered that the humans had been doing most of the actual experimental work. The research ground to a halt in the Krenathi military fleet. Human tactical advisors had been dismissed as weak beings unworthy of warrior respect. But those advisors had been quietly managing logistics, maintenance schedules, and supply chains. When they departed, the mighty Krenathi fleet began experiencing ammunition shortages, equipment failures, and navigation errors. 3 warships collided during routine maneuvers because the coordination software that humans had maintained stopped working properly. Captain Diana Frost commanded the transport ship Unity, one of hundreds carrying human refugees away from Consortium space. She was 45, tall and athletic, with short black hair and calculating brown eyes. She had been a cargo ship captain before volunteering to help with the Exodus. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from his console. "Captain, we're being hailed by a Dramani interceptor. They're ordering us to stop and return to Consortium Station 9. Diana checked her navigation display. They were still 6 hours inside Consortium space, heading for the border. "Tell them we're exercising our legal right to depart. We have committed no crimes." Park relayed the message. A moment later, he reported, "They're threatening to fire on us if we don't comply." Diana smiled coldly. "Activate the countermeasures." The Dramani interceptor was faster and better armed than the Unity, but it had been maintained by human technicians for the past decade. When it tried to lock weapons on the transport ship, its targeting systems produced error messages. When it tried to close the distance, its engines stuttered and failed. The proud Dramani warship drifted helplessly in space, while the Unity continued toward the border. Captain Park said with satisfaction, "I'm receiving similar reports from other convoys. Consortium ships attempting to intercept us are experiencing technical difficulties." Diana nodded. Before humans left, they had ensured that any Consortium vessel that might threaten human ships would have trouble doing so. Nothing permanent, nothing that could not be fixed by competent technicians. But competent technicians were exactly what the Consortium had just lost, as Unity crossed into neutral space. Diana received a message from Dr. Marcus Webb aboard the flagship Destiny. "All convoys have successfully departed Consortium territory," Marcus reported. "0 casualties, minimal incidents. Operation Silent Departure is complete." Diana allowed herself to relax slightly. They had done it. Millions of humans had left Consortium space peacefully, despite threats and intimidation. Now came the hard part: building something new. Behind them, the Galactic Trade Consortium was beginning to realize the magnitude of its mistake. In council chambers across 100 worlds, alien leaders held emergency meetings. They reviewed reports of failing systems, collapsed infrastructure, and economic disruption. They argued about who was to blame and what to do next, but they did not yet understand the full truth. They still believed humans were simply skilled workers who could be replaced with enough effort. They still believed the Consortium's problems were temporary technical issues that would be solved in a few weeks. They were wrong. The problems were just beginning, and they would not be solved quickly or easily. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about the difference between hierarchy and competence, between authority and capability, between commanding others and understanding what makes things actually work. Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Destiny, watching the stars ahead. Behind him lay the Consortium, already fracturing. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. Humanity had walked away from security and stability because both had come at the price of dignity. Now they would discover what they could build without anyone standing above them. The galaxy was about to change. Humans would change with it. The unraveling Captain Diana Frost guided the convoy of 47 human transport ships through neutral space, heading toward a region known as the Outer Reach. It was a frontier area, far from Consortium control, where independent worlds and minor species carved out their own territories. Behind her, the Galactic Trade Consortium was learning what it meant to lose the people who made their civilization actually function. 3 weeks had passed since the Exodus. Diana received daily intelligence reports from human observers monitoring Consortium communications. The news was worse than anyone had predicted. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Park said, forwarding a data stream to her command console. It was an intercepted distress call from Consortium Central Hub, the administrative heart of the entire galactic organization. Diana listened to High Chancellor Vorix's voice, no longer cold and authoritative, but tinged with panic. "All Consortium members are ordered to send technical personnel to Central Hub immediately. We are experiencing critical systems failures across multiple departments. Priority Alpha emergency protocols are in effect." "How bad is it?" Diana asked. Park pulled up additional reports. "Central Hub has lost primary power twice in the past week. Their water recycling systems are contaminated. Life support is failing in 17 sectors. They've evacuated 40,000 non-essential personnel. Diana shook her head in disbelief. Central Hub was supposed to be the most advanced station in the galaxy, protected by multiple redundant systems. What about their own engineers? They have engineers, Park said. But those engineers designed the systems 1,000 years ago. Humans were the ones who modified and maintained them. The original designers don't understand the current configurations. On the planet Drammer, homeworld of the Dramani Empire, similar chaos was unfolding. Director Vexus stood in the Planetary Operations Center, watching displays that had turned from orderly green to alarming red. She was responsible for managing the infrastructure of a world with 12 billion inhabitants. Report, she demanded from her subordinate, a young Dramani named Kelrix. Director. We have cascade failures across the global transportation network, Kelrix said, his antennae drooping with stress. The magnetic rail systems are experiencing timing errors. Cargo shipments are being routed to wrong destinations. Passenger trains have stopped entirely as a safety precaution. Where are the human coordinators who manage this system? Vexus asked. They departed 3 weeks ago, Director. We assumed we could operate the systems ourselves. After all, we've built them. Then why are they failing? Kelrix brought up technical schematics on the main display. We built the original systems, yes? But over the past 30 years, humans modified nearly every component. They improved efficiency by 40% and reduced maintenance costs by 35%. These modifications are not documented in our original designs. Vexus felt a cold fear in her thorax. Are you saying we don't know how our own infrastructure works? We know how it used to work, Director. We don't know how it works now. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in 100 different languages. The Silicon Collective discovered that their famous crystal computing networks had been secretly stabilized by human technicians for decades. Without human intervention, the networks began experiencing cascade failures and data corruption. The Silicon's vaunted perfect memory started to develop gaps and errors. The Krenethi Dominion. Proud warriors who had conquered 30 star systems found their military machine grinding to a halt. General Thork summoned his logistics officers and demanded answers. Why do we have ammunition shortages? He roared. We have factories producing millions of rounds daily. His chief logistics officer, a scarred veteran named Krax, spoke carefully. General, the factories are producing ammunition, but the distribution network has collapsed. Shipments are going to the wrong bases. Some ammunition is being delivered to ships that use different caliber weapons. Other shipments are sitting in warehouses because the inventory tracking system no longer functions correctly. Then fix the tracking system. We're trying, General. But the system was maintained by human analysts. They created custom algorithms that optimize distribution based on predicted needs, current stockpiles, and tactical deployments. Without them, we only have the basic system, which cannot handle our current operational complexity. Thork slammed his clawed hand on the table. Are you telling me the mighty Krenethi Dominion has been dependent on weak humans for basic logistics? Yes, General Krax said quietly. That is exactly what I'm telling you. The consortium leadership held an emergency session. High Chancellor Vorex looked haggard, his usually pristine chitinous plates dull and cracked. Around him, the other leaders showed similar signs of stress. We must bring the humans back, Vorex said. We cannot continue like this. Ambassador Kelthra of the Silicon Collective shimmered with frustration. They refuse all communication. We have sent diplomatic envoys, trade offers, even apologies. They ignore everything. Then we use force, General Thork said. My fleet will intercept their convoys and compel their return. With what ships? Asked Counselor Mendra of the Talaxian Union, a small feline species. Half your fleet cannot leave dock because of maintenance failures. The other half gets lost trying to navigate without human coordination. The meeting descended into arguments and recriminations. Each species blamed the others for the crisis. Each leader insisted their own people had not been dependent on humans. Each denial rang hollow as the evidence mounted. Meanwhile, Diana Frost's convoy reached the Outer Reach and made contact with the Vorlon Collective, a loose alliance of independent worlds. The Vorlon were a species that the consortium had always dismissed as primitive. They were small, barely a meter tall, with fur-covered bodies and large eyes. But they were also welcoming. Commander Sitka of the Vorlon approached the negotiating table with genuine curiosity rather than the condescension humans had grown used to. "Welcome to Vorlon space," she said in careful standard speech. "We heard what happened with the consortium. You walked away from them." Dr. Marcus Webb, who had joined Diana's convoy, handled the diplomatic contact. "We did. They offered us a choice between accepting permanent inferiority or leaving. We chose to leave." Sitka's large eyes blinked thoughtfully. "The consortium called you Tier 4 species. They call us primitive. Perhaps we have more in common than they realize." "Perhaps we do," Marcus agreed. Over the following weeks, humans began establishing settlements in the Outer Reach with permission from the Vorlon and several other minor species. They found something unexpected. These supposedly primitive civilizations were eager to learn and share rather than dominate and control. The Vorlon had limited technology, but deep understanding of sustainable source management. Humans shared their engineering knowledge. The Vorlon shared their ecological wisdom. Together, they began designing colonies that worked in harmony with their environments rather than against them. The Patrani, another minor species, were natural mathematicians with insights into quantum mechanics that impressed even human physicists. They had lacked the industrial capacity to build large-scale technology, but with human help, they began constructing research facilities that pushed the boundaries of theoretical science back in consortium space. The crisis deepened. On the medical station Healing Light, Dr. Velcro faced a decision that would haunt her. 2 patients lay dying of Kranathi red fever, a disease that had been nearly eliminated thanks to a treatment developed jointly by human and alien researchers. "Where is the treatment?" Velkara demanded. Her assistant brought up the research files. "The formula is here, doctor." But the synthesis process was managed by Dr. Sarah Martinez, one of the humans who departed. The process requires precise timing and specific equipment calibrations. We've attempted to replicate it 3 times. Each batch was inactive. Contact Dr. Martinez. Offer her anything she wants. Just get her back here. The assistant returned an hour later. Dr. Martinez responded. She said she would be happy to provide the treatment, but only if we agree to share all medical research freely with non-consortium species and end the Tiered Species Act. She said, saving lives should not be contingent on political hierarchy. Velkara looked at her dying patients, then at the message on her screen. For the first time, she understood what the humans had been trying to tell them. Knowledge and skill were not measures of superiority. They were gifts to be shared, not weapons to enforce dominance. For weeks after the Exodus, the consortium attempted one final act of aggression. High Chancellor Vorix authorized a military operation to capture human settlements in the Outer Reach. General Thorx led a battle group of 30 warships, the largest force the Kranathi could still deploy. Diana Frost received a warning from Vorlon scouts when the consortium fleet was still 2 days away. She immediately contacted Marcus Webb and the other convoy leaders. They're coming in force, she reported. 30 warships against our cargo transports and the Vorlon defense fleet. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus was calm. Are we? Diana understood his meaning. Lieutenant Park, what's the actual operational status of that consortium battle group? Park accessed intelligence reports. Captain, according to our sources, 12 of those 30 ships are experiencing engine problems. 8 have weapon system malfunctions. 5 have navigation errors. Only 5 ships in the entire battle group are at full operational capacity. And our defenses. Every human transport has been modified with shielding technology we designed ourselves. The Vorlon defense ships may look small, but they're fast and well-armed. And we have something the consortium doesn't. What's that? Coordination. Our fleet operates as a unified force because we communicate clearly and respect each other's contributions. Their fleet operates on rigid hierarchy and assumptions of superiority. When the consortium battle group arrived, what followed was not a battle, but a humiliation. The 5 functional consortium ships attempted to engage while the other 25 struggled with technical problems. The Vorlon defense fleet, guided by human tactical advisors, outmaneuvered the larger consortium vessels with ease. General Thorks watched in disbelief as his mighty warships stumbled over each other, their crews unable to coordinate effectively without the human staff officers they had always dismissed as unnecessary. When one of his capital ships collided with another due to a navigation error, Thorks ordered a retreat. The battle group limped back to consortium space, and with it died any hope of forcing humans to return. That evening, Diana stood on the observation deck of her ship, now permanently stationed at New Haven, the first human settlement in the Outer Reach. Commander Sitka joined her. "Your old leaders made a mistake," Sitka said simply. "They did," Diana agreed. "They confused authority with competence. They thought being old made them wise, and being powerful made them right. Will you go back?" Eventually, Diana considered the question. Maybe someday, but only as equals. Only when they understand that every being has value, regardless of age or power. Below them, New Haven glowed with lights. Humans and Vorlon worked side by side, building something neither species could have built alone. It was smaller than the consortium's grand stations, less impressive than their ancient cities. But it was theirs, built on respect and cooperation rather than hierarchy and control. The galaxy was changing. The old order was crumbling. And in the space between what had been and what would be, humans and their new allies were creating something better. The new alliance, 6 months after the Exodus, Ambassador Rachel Torres stood in the Assembly Hall of Commonwealth Station, a structure that had not existed when humans left consortium space. The station orbited a neutral star in the Outer Reach. Built through the combined efforts of humans and 7 minor species, it was not as large as consortium's central hub, but it was functional, and it belonged to beings who chose to work together as equals. Rachel was 38 years old, daughter of a mining family from Mars, with olive skin and determined dark eyes. She had been a trade negotiator before the Exodus, skilled at finding common ground between different species. Now she served as the chief diplomat for what they called the Commonwealth Coalition, an alliance built on principles the consortium had never understood. Today, representatives from 15 species filled the assembly hall. Some, like the Vorlon and Petrani, had been founding members. Others had joined recently, attracted by the coalition's promise of equal partnership. And 3 seats remained empty, reserved for consortium observers who had finally agreed to attend. The first consortium representative arrived precisely on schedule. Ambassador Kelthera of the Silicon Collective entered the hall, her crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. She moved slowly, carefully, as if unsure of her welcome. Rachel greeted her formally. "Ambassador Kelthera, welcome to Commonwealth Station." "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Kelthera's voice, usually cold and certain, now carried notes of uncertainty. "Ambassador Torres, I come not with demands but with questions. The Silicon Collective wishes to understand what you are building here." The second arrival was Chancellor Vorax of the Dramani Empire, younger brother of High Chancellor Vorax. The older Vorax had fallen from power 3 months ago when the Dramani homeworld experienced a complete power grid failure that left 12 billion citizens without electricity for 6 days. Vorax looked at the assembly hall with obvious discomfort at seeing so many species seated at the same level. The third consortium representative surprised everyone. General Thorks of the Krenathi Dominion entered wearing no armor or weapons, just a simple ceremonial robe. The proud warrior looked diminished somehow, as if the past 6 months had taught him humility through hard lessons. Rachel addressed the assembly. "We gathered today to discuss the future of our galaxy. 6 months ago, humans departed the Galactic Trade Consortium because we were told our place was at the bottom. We were classified as Tier 4, given no voice in decisions that affected our lives." She gestured to the diverse species around her. "Here we discovered something the consortium had forgotten. Value does not come from age or power. It comes from what each being contributes and how we treat each other. The Vorlon taught us about ecological balance. The Patrani shared mathematical insights that advanced our quantum research. The Sothians brought agricultural techniques that tripled food production. Commander Sitka of the Vorlon stood. The consortium called us primitive. They said we had nothing to offer. But humans listened to us. They respected our knowledge. Together, we have achieved more in 6 months than we did in centuries of isolation. Ambassador Kelthora spoke, her crystal form flickering with what might have been shame. The Silicon Collective has sent me to acknowledge truth. Without human maintenance, our crystal computing networks have degraded by 40%. Data loss is catastrophic. We have lost historical records that we believed were perfectly preserved. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. We built those networks 1,000 years ago and believed they were eternal. We did not realize they required constant adaptation to remain functional. Humans provided that adaptation. We took credit for their work and gave them no respect in return. Chancellor Vorek spoke next. The Dramini Empire controls 37 worlds, or we did. 16 have declared independence in the past 6 months. Our infrastructure is failing. Our economy has collapsed. My brother, the High Chancellor, refused to admit that humans were essential. He believed Dramani pride was more important than Dramani's survival. General Thorx stood, and his massive frame somehow seemed less intimidating than it once had. The Krenethi are warriors. We conquered 30 systems through military might. But we learned that conquest is easy. Administration is hard. Logistics is hard. Making diverse systems work together is hard. Humans did all the hard things while we took glory for military victories. He looked directly at Rachel. I led a battle group against your settlements. My ships could barely fly. My crews could barely communicate. I watched in humiliation as smaller vessels outmaneuvered us because you work as teams, while we work as hierarchies. I understand now why humans left. I would have left too. Rachel listened to each confession, each admission of failure. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness for the suffering that could have been avoided if the consortium had chosen wisdom over pride. The Commonwealth Coalition offers an alternative model, she said. Every member species has equal voice. Decisions are made by consensus. Knowledge is shared freely. No one stands above or below. Dr. Marcus Webb, now serving as the Coalition's science advisor, spoke from his seat. In 6 months, we have established 27 colonies, launched 15 joint research projects, and created trade networks that benefit all members equally. Our economy is growing while the consortium shrinks. Our technology advances while theirs stagnates. A Patrani scientist named Kickstel added, with human engineering and Patrani mathematics, we have developed faster-than-light communication that does not require the consortium's relay network. Any species can use this technology freely. We do not hoard knowledge like the consortium did. Ambassador Kelthora's crystalline form pulsed with emotion. You offer this technology freely? Even to the consortium that treated you so poorly? Knowledge should not be a weapon, Rachel said. It should be a gift. Yes, we will share our communication technology with anyone who wishes to use it, including consortium species. We ask only that you recognize the beings who developed it and treat them with respect. The assembly spent the next 4 hours discussing terms for potential cooperation between the Commonwealth and the consortium. Rachel made the coalition's position clear. They would work with the consortium, but only as equals. There would be no return to the Tiered Species Act. There would be no hierarchy based on age or power. Chancellor Vorek struggled with this concept. The Dramani Empire has existed for 5,000 years. Surely that experience grants us some authority, Commander Sitka responded gently. Experience is valuable, Chancellor, but it does not grant you the right to control others. Share your experience, and we will value it. Demand obedience because of your age, and we will refuse. General Thork surprised everyone by supporting the Commonwealth position. I have learned something these past months, he said. The Krenethi thought military power made us superior. We were wrong. Military power only means we were good at destruction. The humans and their allies are good at creation. I know which one builds a lasting civilization. As the formal discussions concluded, Rachel invited the consortium representatives to tour Commonwealth Station. They visited research laboratories where humans and Patrani worked on quantum projects. They saw agricultural stations where humans and South Ants developed drought-resistant crops. They observed medical centers where doctors from 7 species collaborated on treatments for diseases that affected all of them in each location. The consortium representatives saw the same thing, beings from different species working side by side, sharing ideas freely, treating each other with respect. No one wore badges indicating their rank. No one stood on elevated platforms to emphasize their importance. The hierarchy they had known their entire lives was simply absent. That evening, Ambassador Kelthora requested a private meeting with Rachel. They met in a small observation room overlooking the station's gardens, where Sothan and human botanists had created a living artwork combining plants from 24 worlds. This is difficult for me to say, Kelthora began, her crystalline form refracting the garden lights. The Silicants have always believed we were superior because of our perfect memory and logical minds. We thought emotion was weakness, and hierarchy was natural order. And now? Rachel asked. Now I see that perfect memory is useless if you remember only your own perspective. Logic without empathy creates systems that serve themselves rather than the beings they were meant to help. Kelthora turned to face Rachel directly. Will you help us? Not return to the consortium, but help us rebuild into something better. Rachel considered carefully. The Silicants had been among the most dismissive of humans, calling them illogical and emotional. But Kelthora's question showed genuine humility and willingness to learn. We will help, Rachel said, but not as employees or servants. As partners, your crystal computing technology combined with our adaptive algorithms could create something neither species could build alone. Are you willing to work as equals? Yes, Kelthora said without hesitation. The old way nearly destroyed us. We are ready to learn a new way. Over the following months, the galaxy's structure fundamentally changed. The Galactic Trade Consortium did not disappear, but it transformed. The Tiered Species Act was abolished. The elevated platforms in the council chamber were removed, replaced by a circular arrangement where all species sat at the same level. 8 of the original 12 founding empires collapsed entirely, their territories reorganizing into smaller, more cooperative federations. The Commonwealth Coalition grew to 37 member species. Some were former consortium members seeking a better path. Others were minor species who finally had a voice in galactic affairs. The coalition's principles spread: equal representation, shared knowledge, decisions by consensus rather than authority. Dr. Sarah Martinez returned to medical research, but now she worked at a Commonwealth medical station that shared all discoveries freely. When she developed an improved treatment for Krenethi red fever, it was distributed to every species that needed it without cost or conditions. Chief Engineer Robert Kane established a technical academy on New Haven, where young beings from dozens of species learned engineering together. Human students worked alongside Dramani, Vorlon, and others, each bringing their unique perspectives to solve problems. Captain Diana Frost continued commanding transport ships, but now she led trade convoys between Commonwealth worlds and reforming consortium territories. Every voyage demonstrated that cooperation was more profitable than exploitation. A year after the Exodus, Rachel Torres stood once again in the Assembly Hall of Commonwealth Station. This time, the hall held representatives from 83 species, including most of the former consortium members. The gathering celebrated the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Charter, a document that formally established principles of equality and mutual respect. High Chancellor Orcs attended. Having regained limited power in a reformed Dramani government, he approached Rachel privately after the ceremony. Ambassador Torres, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. When you stood in my council chamber a year ago, I called humans janitors. I dismissed your concerns. I believed age granted wisdom and power granted authority. Rachel met his compound eyes. And now? Now I understand that wisdom comes from learning and authority must be earned through respect, not demanded through force. My empire collapsed because I did not see the value of those I considered beneath me. Paused. Thank you for not abandoning us entirely. You had every right to leave us to fail. We did not leave to punish you, Chancellor, Rachel said. We left to find something better, and we hoped that eventually you would want to find it too. That evening, Rachel sent a message to Earth, where her parents still lived in the Mars colonies. Mom, Dad, she wrote, we did it. Not just survived, but built something new. The galaxy is learning that strength comes from cooperation, not domination. That wisdom comes from listening, not commanding. That every being has value, regardless of age or power. She looked out at the stars, where Commonwealth stations and settlements now dotted space like jewels. Humans quit the Council because we knew our worth. We walked away from security to find dignity. And in doing so, we showed others that a better galaxy was possible. We're building it now, together as equals. The galaxy would never be the same. The old hierarchies were gone, replaced by networks of cooperation. The old certainties about superior and inferior species had dissolved, replaced by recognition that diversity was strength. And humans, the species once dismissed as Tier 4 janitors, had helped lead the transformation. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had not forced change through military might. They had simply refused to accept disrespect, walked away from those who would not treat them as equals, and built something better with those who would. In the end, that quiet dignity had changed everything. The never-ending story of humanity and its allies continued. Written each day by beings who chose cooperation over competition, respect over hierarchy, and partnership over domination. It was a story without end, because each generation would add new chapters, new species, new possibilities, and it all began the day humans quit the Council, and the empires learned what they had lost.